2025 is shaping up to be a really exciting year for super shoes. We've already seen the launch of the Adidas Pro 4 earlier this month, and with more set to drop over the next 2 or 3 months, I want to dive in and go over some of those hotly anticipated releases. Now, as you've probably seen, I've recently had success with the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, but that's a 2024 release, and I've probably got the budget to pick up a couple of these upcoming releases. And I'll share at the end which ones I think I'm going to be picking up, and I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments which ones are really exciting you. And we will kickstart with the one that has had a bit of a release already, the Adios Pro 4. This one was dropped in January, but limited numbers. I think there's more coming in February and beyond. I'm still waiting for them to release my size. I'll be honest with you, sneak peek, this is one of the ones that I'd really like to pick up. I don't know about you guys, I had great success with the Adios Pro 3, a few teething issues with the sizing, but when I got that sorted, it was an absolutely beautiful shoe. It ended up not being good enough for me for my racing, but I used it so much in training, I ended up putting over 500 miles in the shoe. Well, 501 to be precise. Now, they fixed a lot of the issues from the Pro 3 moving into the Pro 4, and that really surrounded the upper. There was a lot of heel issues, a lot of issues over the top of the foot. People were finding the upper was a little bit too coarse, it cut in. I understand all of that. I sort of got used to it after a while, but it was a really, really effective shoe. The big change in this version, of course, is that midsole. Earlier reviews on this one seem to be saying the midsole is a darn sight softer than version 3. Now, of course, I found version 3, as I said, great for training, but of course, with a softer shoe, you're looking for a little bit more responsiveness, a little bit more propulsion. I'm seeing mixed impressions here. A lot of people are saying it's the best thing that they've tried. A lot of people are saying it's too soft. Now, for me, I'm definitely someone that prefers a firmer midsole. However, I'm more than open to trying this one. I would love to see what they've done with it, and I really do think it's going to work really well for some people, and of course, maybe not for others that don't like it to be as soft as it is. But there's plenty of reviews out there on that one. You can go and check out the Pro 4 from other people. The next one that I want to highlight is the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0. Now, the first version of this is one that you guys recommended to me so much last year. You said you thought this one would work for me really well, and I heard a lot of reports that you guys loved it too. But again, just how like I used my Pro 3, you guys used it for training shoes quite a lot. A lot of you did race in it, but a lot of you found it to be just such a great mileage shoe. And I always kind of felt like I don't want to spend that sort of money on something that I'm just going to use in training, because my Pro 3 that I did that with, I ended up getting on quite a heavy discount. So I was quite happy to do that, but to pay full price for a training shoe, I was just not interested. However, it looks like they have heard and listened, because in version 2, it's lost a lot of weight and suddenly it's far more aggressive. Again, from early reports, it looks like the weight has been brought down in line with the other super shoes from the other brands, which is great. Suddenly it feels like it might just be a competitor, and it looks like it's going to be more aggressive as well. Again, from early reports from a few people, it sounds like it's a type of shoe that puts you up on your toes. I know a lot of people love the Rocket X2. It seemed to be Hoka's first super shoe that really broke into the market. I'm hoping this one for them will do the same as well. The Saucony Endorphin Elite 2 is coming out in a month or two's time. I won't take up too much time on this one because I did cover this in a Saucony video the other day, but it looks to be a complete overhaul from version 1. Massive changes to the upper by the looks of it, heel counter across the upper, and the midsole is completely different as well. This is going to be an interesting one. This is one that I am very interested in. However, I'm very, very scared about, because I am a humongous fan of version 1. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard as well, the foam in this one is completely the other end of the spectrum to version 1. I found that one to be on the firmer side, but not too firm. It was literally, it was perfect. It was that sweet spot, and it gave such a good rebound effect when I was going through the gait cycle. It was just the best. It is to date my favorite super shoe that I have ever tested. On the other hand, we've got the new version 2, which seems to be the softest foam that anyone has ever talked about. However, what I will say is the early reports from a few people and a few good reputable sources out there seems to be that when you pick up the speed in it, it seems to respond better. However, I watched a Doctors of Running video on it the other day, and he was saying that it really hit its sweet spot around that tempo area when you really picked it up. But I guess, as a lot of people expected, when he tried to do some strides or some faster stuff, he really couldn't get that turnover, which I guess is to be understandable, because when you're you're running with that softer foam, it's going to feel like it's sapping the energy away from you and you're not going to be able to get that fast, snappy turnover. But he said at the tempo range, which I think is where a lot of people are thinking that this thing is going to shine, and of course at race paces, it was really, really magical. So let's hope the softer foam does us justice and it is worth the money. The Nike Vaporfly version 4 looks to be dropping this spring as well. This one is probably the one that I'm least interested in. I kind of feel like Nike have been basking in their glory of really breaking into the super shoe realm with the 4%, and then of course the version 1 and 2 of the Vaporfly. They were absolutely fantastic. I still have a few pairs of version 2 myself and I will still be ready to use them. They are still one of the best super shoes out there, but I feel like things really went downhill after the Alphafly version 2, and then of course we have the Vaporfly version 3 and now the Alphafly version 3. I do feel like the version 3 of the Alphafly is pretty decent, but in a UK size 13, which I am, which of course is on the larger end of the spectrum, it is far too much shoe for me. It doesn't disappear on feet. It is efficient, I do feel good in it, but it just does feel a little bit too clumpy. Now with the images of the version 4 Vaporfly, it doesn't look to be changing too much from the previous version. The silhouette of the shoe looks to be relatively similar. It does look to have a shelf around the back, which is very reminiscent of the Alphafly, but in terms of the changes from 3 to 4, I'm going to argue toss and say it doesn't look to be that innovative. I found that with version 1 and 2 they really didn't make that much change, and I was fine with that because both of them, well, version 1 of course for me was one of my favorites. Version 2 they changed it up, or it did get a bit heavier, but the geometry, the setup of it was all very similar, and that's fine. They didn't tinker with it too much. If it works, don't break it. Version 3, I just kind of feel like the longer I ran in that shoe, the more mushier it got, the less responsive it got, and I feel like version 4 is again just some really small tiny updates to version 3. Don't get me wrong, there do look to be a few visual changes, but it doesn't look to be anything drastic. Nothing seems to have massively changed, and therefore with my lack of success with version 3, this is one I might pick up later in the year, but maybe wait for some kind of discount. And the Brooks Hyperion 4 PB is the last one I want to mention right now. There are others which I'll talk about shortly. However, this is the one that excites me, but I know I'm not going to be able to test it because they don't do my size in super shoes. I can test Brooks shoes in training shoes, but for whatever reason they just stop at a UK 12. Exactly the same with Asics and some other brands too. The fact that they're introducing PIBA into their midsoles is a big game changer for Brooks. I've always been a fan of their nitrogen infused midsoles. I've used the Hyperion Tempos, the Hyperion Maxes, the Max 2, the normal Hyperion, the Hyperion 2. I've enjoyed all of them and I think it does a really good job. It suits me well because it is on the slightly firmer end of the spectrum, and that's what I'm looking for. But I feel like with this PIBA based midsole that they're now going to be using, it is a bit of a game changer. There's nothing really different from the shoe from the Hyperion Elite 4, but it is going to provide very much a different underfoot feel and underfoot sensation, and you will get a different ride from that midsole. The question is though, is it enough to put it up into that top level bracket? I'd love to find out. I'm certainly not going to be able to, but again, this is where you guys come in. I'd love for you guys to check this one out at some point and feedback later on down the line. Now of course a couple of brands I haven't mentioned, Puma and Asics, those are two that I haven't seen too much about with super shoes. I'm sure we will see something. Of course we saw Clayton Young run the Houston Half Marathon in some Asics prototypes, which are going to be an evolution of their current range. So of course we will probably see something later in the year. It might be an autumn release, who knows, but I haven't seen anything from them with regards to a spring release. And if I'm honest, I haven't seen anything from Puma as well, which is interesting because I know they have two very successful Fast R and the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 in their lineup. So again, we might see something in spring, I don't know, but I would maybe suspect potentially autumn because I've not seen any whisperings on any social media platforms at the moment. Now here's my personal preference. I'm torn between three of the shoes and I'm only going to be able to get a couple of them, so I am really going to need to think about this carefully. I would love to try the Adios Pro 4. With the success I had in the Pro 3, I just feel like I need to try this one. I've heard good things. My good friend Robin from Road to Trail is absolutely loving his. He's done a couple of videos on it already. He's well worth checking out if you want to know more on that. I'm definitely keen on the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0. Believe it or not, although it's not a potentially standout super shoe, the Rocket X2 again was recommended to me a lot. It's not something I ever touched. Again, the Cielo X1 was something you guys recommended last year and I didn't bother, but you guys have been quite right with the shoes that you recommend to me, because every time you say something and I get it later down the line, I'm like, why didn't I listen to you sooner? So I'm very keen on trying that one. And then of course the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2. That's the other one that I'm really interested in trying. So I'm probably going to get a couple of those. Which ones, I'm not sure yet. We'll see what happens. Again, it might end up being the Hoka and the Saucony because Adidas seem to release my size later down the line. So the initial drop that they've just done didn't have my UK size 13.5 because I have to half size up in Adidas. And who knows when they'll actually drop my size in a colorway. When they do, I'll be straight on it. But until then, it might be later in the year. So we might grab the Hoka and the Saucony first. And I'll throw it back to you guys. Which ones are you really excited about this year? Are you thinking about picking anything up? New Balance is another one that I haven't mentioned. Again, I haven't seen anything too much on them, whether there'll be a spring release or autumn. I'd love if you guys know anything, please do drop a comment below. It would be great to hear. And as I said, let me know which one you guys fancy picking up, which ones have worked for you in the past, and which ones are you excited for later this year. It'd be great to hear from you. Drop a comment and I will do my best to get back to all of you. That's it from me today on this one, guys. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about what Saucony have lined up this year, check out this video up here. And if you're interested in seeing how the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 did at my local race this weekend, which, spoiler alert, they were incredible, check out this video down here and I'll see you over on one of those.